Tony Seabrook. Good morning, Professor. How you doing today?
Good morning. I'm sore. I'm still in my workout mode, so I'm sore, but I'm going to work through it.
Man, listen. I got a pickle to pick with Anna. I like my music, man. I got to get my music to get my juices flowing. So we don't have any music to kick us off this morning. So I know everybody out there, you listening to us, you're used to hearing the groovy tunes that kick off the show. Well, we don't have the music this morning, but what we do have is a bunch of topics. And I know, I mean, there's so many things, Professor, that we can talk about this week. One of the things is, and if I could, it just seems like to me America has awakened to the issue of race. You know, and I'll tell you, it was kind of like at one point in time they woke up to the issue of how the Native Americans had been treated, and there was an effort to try to let them go back to being, after trying to force them to assimilate, creating colleges and taking their kids. America decided, you know what, it's okay for Native Americans to have their own type of culture here in America, and they stopped doing that. They kind of let them be what they wanted to be, and if they wanted to be a part of the greater American experiment, they did. Stay on the reservation, they did, and they did a lot to try to give them a chance to get to restore their dignity. We can have another show about whether that's successful or not.
Yeah, I was waiting.
Right. I feel like we got a little bit of that going on now. It's like it's okay to be black, and it's okay to tell white folks that's some things I'm not happy about being black, and I don't want to go back to Africa either.
And you don't want to go back to what?
Africa.
Oh, right.
Just because everything's not perfect, you know, that's the caveat. You know, you want to just go back to Africa then. You know, but I'm just saying, I just feel like it's people more comfortable saying, you know, it's not all great.
Mm-hmm. And to qualify that, a typical response I hear is African Americans, especially young African Americans. I've never been to Africa. I'm not going. This is home for me.
Okay.
You know, my concern with the protest is, I mentioned it last week, and I think I'll continue to say it, is I don't know if I'm ready for what it may take, because for this to really be productive, we have to get past the looting, the protesting, any type of physical part. We have to get past that part. And what are we going to do after that is 3 months from now? What's it going to be like?
Well, let me say something right there. Then, why do we have to get past the protesting before the solution? Can't we see what the solution is going to be, and then we decide, okay, it's time to stop?
Well, in an ideal world, I would say yeah. But here's that: if I'm scared to open my business because I'm not a black-owned business, that's part of the culture. That's part of the community. Where's the solution going to come from if the community can't sustain and can't open and can't operate?
All right. I think you're confusing the riots and looting with the protesting. It's not the same.
I think it's tomato, because people like to make that distinction. But then other people go, well, why can't I chew gum and walk at the same time? Why is it this or that? Now, here's a better way. Democrats like to say it's a peaceful protest. As you see it falling down, as you see them breaking in the store, it's a peaceful protest. Come on, you can't have it.
That was an ancillary crime. It's like at a football game if a fight break out. That doesn't mean the football game isn't happening. That means there were some hooligans in the stand fighting. That's a separate criminal issue, and let's treat it like that.
Okay.
You like that analogy?
I like that.
I've been working on that. I've been working on that one. No, that's not the same thing. And there are opportunists that will seize those moments. But I think right now, it's kind of gotten cleaned up. The protests were getting hijacked initially because they weren't organized. I think now they're much more organized, and I'm not hearing a lot of looting and all that kind of stuff happening now. You are getting protesters confronting law enforcement.
Okay, yeah, I thought you were missing that. Okay.
No. They're still confronting law enforcement, but they're not, like I said, they're not necessarily out there to destroy and tear down and all that kind of stuff. Which is, again, though, is a little caveat. When you protest, you know, you gotta make sure people know you're serious.
Right,
you know?
and see, I get it, because I'll say it again. I told my wife, she's tired of hearing it. This time is different. I like the one thing that Dave Chappelle said, and I know we're going to get to maybe some of the Candace Owens things here in a minute. But his point was, African Americans, we didn't choose George Floyd to be our guy. He's saying that the media did, and the people who are somehow portraying George Floyd any other way than a dead African American at the hands of police officers. So you guys made him that guy. And look, I really forgot where I was going with that. Where was I going with that?
Well, let's talk about, let's go off into the Dave Chappelle, and let's talk about the Candace Owens situation. But my question was, who are the Republicans right now, the black Republicans, that are giving Donald Trump sound advice? And you mentioned Candace Owens. She's a personality. I don't know how much real discussion she's having, or influence she has. Who's inside the room saying, "Hey, Mr. President, XYZ"? Because somebody did, because I heard he changed his Juneteenth event.
Well, I think you have Tim Scott, you had Dr. Alveda King, you have those key figures out there. Tim Scott, the black senator from South Carolina,
the single elected black senator, uno.
Hey, that's a different day. But I know he has the ear of the president. I know.
But will he say what he can hear? Will he say what needs to be said to the president? Is the issue? It's not that he's there. What's the guy's name? Housing and Urban Development.
Dan Carson, Dr. Carson.
I don't know what he'll say in the room though.
Exactly.
That's my concern.
Two different personalities, and I think we could probably expect or believe that Senator Scott would say things that, he's going to be tactful about it because, look who we're talking about, President Trump. So I think you have to be not even tactful, but you have to word it in a way that he doesn't get offended, because once, he's offended, then everything goes out the door. I think Senator Scott can and will and does, as opposed to Dr. Carson, who's, obviously he's just a bit more.
Now, what makes you say Tim Scott? Well, he did an interview yesterday where he had issues saying things about systematic racism in America. He really struggled, to deal with that issue, which is, I think, if you have to say America does not have systematic racism, I'd like to tell me the date that it got rid of it.
Right.
and I don't know that date.
And I didn't see that interview, but I can almost imagine he does not want to be the person national on TV that says something, and now President Trump is going to take aim at him. And then again, he being the lone black guy, I've been in that situation in a different scenario. I'm sure you have.
Listen, you're exactly right about that. Go ahead.
And you have to be careful, because it can come back on you. But still, I didn't see that interview. I wouldn't even think Senator Scott thinks there's no systematic. Because
one of the things he talked about was how often he said he recanted 18 incidents where he'd been stopped driving while black. And he said he talked about the incident where he tried, he was stopped trying to go into the Congress. They didn't believe he was a real senator. It's like he just went down a litany of things. He said, so to say that this doesn't happen, it's not random. And he said, he's never had a legal incident come from it, but he's been stopped in number of times, just by, moving about, so, but I'm really concerned about but somebody told him, look, we got to move this rally from Juneteenth to another day. Essentially, somebody's got his ear.
The thing is, I don't know when the rally was scheduled, but we know it was scheduled in advance. And I know the person that scheduled it probably thought, hey, it was probably I want to say, but if it was pre-COVID, then maybe. Or maybe they thought things would get better, because Trump likes to think he has an end with the African American community. He likes to think, he always
I disagree. I think he wants you to think that he thinks he does, but he knows he doesn't. He can't be that naive. Well, and let's talk about Tulsa real quick. Oklahoma is not in play at all. Right. There's no reason to be in Oklahoma. Tulsa is not a major city. That was really, in my mind, they you can't not know in Oklahoma when they look to get a hotel room. I'm sure the hotel said, y'all know this Juneteenth, right? But we the rates go up. The rates go up 30% on that weekend because everybody's having a party to celebrate the end of slavery. I'm sure, that there's no reason that would not already be on the calendar because it's a gigantic celebration in Tulsa and all in that area out there. So it felt intentional, but he backed away from it, which is not what Trump does. He never showed the sensitivity, which says to me somebody somewhere, and maybe the person's not black. Because let me say this right here. Here's where we make a mistake of, Professor, is oftentimes they put a black person at the table for diversity.
Yeah.
And a black person then does not bring diversity of thought and culture to the table. They come to the table and they blend in with the table, and the other people in the group don't get the benefit of that person's diversity because that person doesn't feel comfortable actually giving the diversity. I'm gonna give you a great example. As a lawyer, I was once brought into a discrimination case to do a deposition of very prominent white individual, corporate executive. And in the deposition, I asked him, has he used the N-word? Everybody lost their mind. It went crazy. We almost lost the deposition. And the lawyers at the team I worked for that brought me in, they were the ones attacking me. They said, how dare you throw that out? I said, how do you have a diversity case and you don't talk about that? I said, I got an 80-year-old guy from Alabama. This is a turkey shoot. He's used the word.
Exactly.
I said, look, I got that on the record. He's used the word. How can I go and have this? But you got to be willing and able. And I think in this day, what we're hearing now is that it may be okay for that diversity of culture and perspective to be put forward. So,
well, I think I think even you there made a huge assumption in that scenario about bringing one black to the table, male or female, and that because the expectation is that they're going to bring some diversity, but there's no diversity of thought. Well, what about in the case of a Candace Owens? You bring her to the table, she thinks like them. So maybe you and I had an assumption that there was going to be some diversity of thought, or we're thinking she's only saying what they want her to say. But Candace Owens says that away from the table, on her own mic. She has her own podcast. She is that person through and through. And if I can go into that, the only issue I have with Candace Owens is she had a need to hear herself. Because she started out, this was over a week ago, she started out saying, I was going to be silent on the issue, blah, 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 but I can no longer be silent. So immediately I go, you just wanted to hear, like, who asked? I mean, I know you have a following. She has a huge following. She's the founder of Blexit. And I mentioned that when we were in studio. Blexit is the black exit from the Democratic Party. They're gaining steam. And people like hers who Trump is associating with, who he allows to come into that circle because they're telling him what he wants to hear. Oh, yeah, you got a chance. Now, you may not believe it. I think the numbers are higher than most Democrats want to believe that Trump has. He has more African-American support than any other, than John McCain, than, those other white Republicans that ran before him.
Yeah, I agree with that. There is an appeal. I think his particularly the black male vote. I don't know how reliable that vote is, but we'll see. Let's talk about something else that's kind of percolating along, Professor, if you don't mind. Mm-hmm. And if you're listening to us on Intex News Radio, I want to let you know that we're trying to do something new. We're using the Zoom call-in process now. So if you've got your pen and pad out, we're going to try something new. We're trying to have people, instead of calling in on the regular phone line to the station, try calling us on Zoom. That number is 929-205-6099. Make this your second straight up the middle phone number to use. But that's just for our show. It's 929-205-6099. You call that number, we'll put you in the waiting room, and then we'll bring you on the air, and you can make your comments. But
that's for the East Coast.
That's for the East Coast. If you're out West, Well, you still probably should be sleeping. It's kind of early for you folks out on the West Coast. But let me say this real quick though. So Professor, we've got this issue circulating about defunding police.
Mm.
And when you hear the word defunding police, it sounds scary. Let me get your thoughts. Kind of what does that mean to you, and where is that taking us?
Well, when people say, "Oh, you don't quite understand what we mean by defund," well, then change the term, because as we all know, words have meaning. That's why we get offended when we hear certain words in the African American community and others. So if it's not defunding, then pick another terms. Because when you tell me that we're going to defund, I don't need for you to tell me what defund means. I need you to tell me, who are you going to defund? Now, if you're not really meaning defund, then don't use that term. And don't play on my intelligence that I'm not sure what you're talking about, because I know what the word means. So since I said that, because I hear that all the time. Yeah, I wish people knew what they were talking about. Well, I wish they would say what they were talking about, then everybody would know. But what I get from that is, or what my understanding is, no, we're not defunding them. What we're doing is restructuring their allocation. So they want to place more of an emphasis on training and social justice and all those type programs. And that's my understanding. I'm right leaning, so I get my information from some different places. But even with that, if social justice is one of those line items that you're trying to reallocate money to and for across the country, how's that going to look? Because being in education, I can tell you social justice and education, billions of dollars already.
Right.
So what are you doing in the police department? How's that going to change the bigger picture when the bigger picture that has billions of dollars already in social justice and education hasn't done well for the African American community? So back to you.
Yeah, I think that one of the worst things we do with problems is throw money at them and think somehow that's going to change people's hearts, their perspective, things of that nature. When I hear the word defunding, here's what I think I'm hearing. We ask police to do too much. That really has little to do with law enforcement.
Same with teachers, but go ahead.
Right, yeah, we've just expanded their role is so wide from, directing traffic, that kind of stuff, all kinds of things that we have police out doing that increase their contacts with people. And so I think the more contacts you have, the more chance you have of something going wrong. And a lot of things don't require somebody to walk up having a gun, a stick, a taser, handcuffs to deal with. Around the world, that's not how a lot of law enforcement function now. The problem you have is who you're going to call for the bad guys if you defund the police. You get rid of the police. So I think that they're talking about, in that context, re-looking at what we ask police to do and say, okay, we're paying police to do this service. And we really don't need them doing that service. Let's carve that out, put that over here, and that funding goes towards solving that problem outside of, for example, I'll give you a case in Hillsborough County where we are down in Florida. We use the police, the sheriff's department, I think, to do DCF, the Children's Abuse Investigation. It's a police officer that goes in and that's run through the sheriff's department. Well, that used to be over at probation. And it was almost like a social service function investigation, but they changed it. It's now considered a law enforcement activity, and those people within the law enforcement community conduct those. I think that, in my mind anyway, and it's not my idea, so I really don't know what it looks like completely. I just know this, Professor. The occupation of African American communities by law enforcement has never stopped. The way it's approached, the way it's handled, and now as we have spread out, that behavior has followed us where we've gone. So now that we're in the suburbs, the police still treat you as they treated you when you lived in this all crime-infested area that they had to have a heavy hand, in theory, to try to handle. And they approach a large percentage of us as if we're already criminals. They just need to discover what the crime is. And if I look in your car and I check your driver's license, the like in Hillsborough County, or in the city of Tampa, we had the bicycle stop.
Right.
That was just an excuse to check people out. And the idea was there were a lot of other crimes that were discovered inside of those investigations. And I think that as a result of that, you end up with this feeling of occupation, so to speak. That's dangerous long term.
Right. And two things about that. One is, as African Americans, and I'm guilty of this, it's something that you become accustomed to. You don't even care, because I don't even care. I've been profiled, I've been stopped, military and otherwise. I was even choked. I'll just put this part. I was even choked on a military base. Now I was out the military. I was on the base at the base club. I'm in my 20s, feeling myself, riding my muscles, that kind of stuff. And I was already restrained, and the guy choked me. Now, here's what I knew. I knew he was doing it because he was a police officer. And he was a white guy. And I knew he probably wanted to exert himself and try to show me something, because I ultimately knew he knew if we were equal, he had no chance. But I let that go. What I'm saying is, the reason why I make that point, because after the Eric Garner, really after George Floyd, I started to go back and think. And when I saw the re-showing of Eric Garner, the guy choking from the back, it made me think of that incident in Jacksonville. He had, and it was dark, and he had other officers there, and I was already restrained. Why the need to choke? Now I know I was running up at on the base. That's what we do. So I tend, and I forgot about that. I think as African Americans, we've been used to it. You said they've occupied. It's normally like a what they call sub post in those housing neighborhoods. They have them all over the place, and we're so used to seeing them, it doesn't bother us. So again, the George Floyd brings that back to life. But you use the example of the defund, and you talked about, the DCF. My issue goes back to, in no other context, let's say I'm in a meeting and I go in and I want these other directors to understand we need to reallocate some money. But I say to them, we need to defund this department. I've just thrown a landmine. So if you don't mean defund, why are you using the term? And it's being used on purpose. Because you can't. And who brought that up? It was on the Democrat side. Whose idea? I mean,
let me say this. I have no idea where it came from, but I will say this, and I think this is a reasonable assumption we have to be careful with. Just because one Democrat says it, I don't think it means that every absolute 100% of all Democrats agree with it.
Well, why is that word trending? Why is that term trending?
Because there are some people that like that idea.
Some people?
Yeah, some people.
It don't trend on some.
Now watch me now. Watch me now. Most ideas start small.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes they're shocking. They're absolutely, when you first hear them, they're absolutely shocking. I'm certain that before they created the atomic bomb, the first time they talked about it, it was shocking to people. And over time, it grew. I don't know. Right now, we still may be, but as this thing synthesizes and works its way through various communities, here's something I do, though. I trust, though, Professor. I trust local communities to figure it out. Your community might not, and I know there are areas that have gotten rid of their police departments, and they've turned that service over to the sheriff to handle, and gotten rid of the local agency so that you don't have the multitude of jurisdictional issues every time somebody drives 5 blocks. You're now in a new, city zone, and the cost and pension and all that. That's administratively. But right now, I don't know that every Democrat is 100% on board with defunding. I think it's an idea that's been thrown out there.
Well, let me help you out with some numbers.
For example, is it somewhere in Camden, New Jersey? Mm-hmm. They got rid of their police department years ago, and the city still functions. There are places that have looked at it. They felt it was so the injustice was so ingrained, the culture, that the only way that they could try to get rid of it is to get rid of the whole department.
But what you're saying is, I think, is misleading, because your first analogy, where they get rid of the local, they wanted to do that in Edenville. They wanted to get rid of Edenville police. It's so small. Edenville is 1.7 miles long. Get rid of the Edenville police and just use Orange County.
Correct.
And that was almost going to happen. I don't know why that changed, but they end up keeping Edenville Police Department. But here's the thing: in that scenario, it doesn't matter if I'm Eatonville or the sheriff to a black man. You still got a badge and a gun. I don't care what
Yeah.
agency you come from, and you're still in my neighborhood. So
Well,
I
it's
mean,
not.
that just
Yeah. I don't know. It's the badge and the gun. I don't think that's the issue. The issue is the ideology that you're using behind the badge and the gun. Now, if I'm dealing with multitude of agencies in that regard, it may be more difficult in doing so. But let me ask you this, and I know we have to go to break in about 4 minutes. Do you think some of the contempt for law enforcement stems from Donald Trump's ongoing battle with law enforcement as relates to his investigation in the FBI?
no. Wait a minute.
Okay.
Are you asking me? Do I think the disdain or whatever for law
Right.
enforcement comes from Donald Trump?
The contempt for, because he's had such contempt
No,
for
no,
investigative
because
branch.
these things happened before Trump. So to now say it's because of Trump is just absolutely passing the blame. We had 3 of these kind of killings under the beloved President Barack Obama. And no
Right.
one said, other than the right, the extreme right said that it's because of Barack Obama. So no, it's not because of Trump. This thing predates Trump and predates Barack Obama.
Then why didn't we have this kind of a response and outcry following those incidents?
Because no one got killed on a live feed.
Eric Garner was choked to death saying I couldn't breathe. That was videotaped live.
The difference is, and there was one that got shot. The difference with this was, maybe it's just the angle. Maybe this was a better recording because it felt different to me. And not that the Eric Garner, and there was a guy who, I forget where he was, but he was shot.
Not Castile in Minnesota.
And let's even use that one because that was under President Obama.
But you didn't get the outrage, and I just think that there's been an erosion of credibility with law enforcement, and I think Donald Trump has led that. And he thinks of transactional stuff. You know, when I hear Donald Trump complaining, like I was watching a show the other day about the Black Panthers, and they showed how the FBI infiltrated, turned those guys against each other. And they had the quotes from, J. Edgar Hoover on this, that, and the other. And it sounded like what Donald Trump was talking about. It sounded exactly what Donald Trump was talking about. And they talked about in Oakland how the organization went from being a community, organization to this kind of, anti-government, violent, and most of that was a result of the way that they were manipulated, through infiltration. It's just a thought. I'm not saying, I don't know for certain, but I know when I hear Donald Trump, I think about, what else is the FBI up to? Well, what else can we not trust? And we know in the Black community in general, there's a distrust of law enforcement that has existed since they used it to enforce segregation.
And in this last minute, I'll still say, if Trump can make the case, because why your statement is, well, what else is the FBI up to? Well, Trump felt the same thing. Because remember, the Pentagon Papers, he felt that they were out to get him and they set him up. They recorded him in his office before he was president. So he has a legitimate case and he hasn't let it go. If he can make that same case to, a broader base of African Americans, we understand that. We know what setup is like. Yeah, we know that. We understand that very well. And I say we.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's do this real quick. Let's take a break. You listen to Intex News Radio, Rally Radio, where everybody can be a star. This is Straight Up the Middle. We're going to take a quick break, and then we'll be right back with some more hot topics. We want you to get involved on the other side of the break. We'll be right back.
All right. I'm going to mute. Okay, so I muted the show out. We have a caller that came in right at 10:27. A 703 number. Is that yours? Wait a minute.
I was muted. Yeah, bring them. Is there a way to let them know on the other side of the break? We'll bring them in.
Yeah, I'm trying to do them now. Yeah.
Okay. There's about a 2-minute lag. I got the show live on my phone.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. We're still on the phone on the actual show. We're still talking.
Okay.
And we can be heard talking. Now we can't. No, we can still be heard.
Oh wow.
Just go mute.
You're good.
All right then, good enough. Hey, that was a great break, and we apologize for the technical difficulties. Uh, so I'm a lawyer, and the uh, professor is an educator, so you got to bear with us on this technology. But listen, we're going to get this thing worked out, and when it does, you all are going to have such a great experience part of the show. We're trying to incorporate Zoom into the show, and listen. Down the road, we might be able to go video and bring you in live, let the world see what you look like early on a Saturday morning instead of you just pointing the finger at us. But I appreciate you bearing with us as we work out these technical issues and difficulties.
No problem.
We were just talking about Professor Seabrook, the defunding the police, and I think it's been, of course, it's as with anything now in America, it becomes shocking. You know, it's everything is to the nth degree, and I think it now has become almost a distraction from some of the other issues. But let's switch over to another topic, and that is what's happening with the um, national commemoration and imagery of the Confederacy.
Yep.
I find it quite interesting. I mean, let me say, I was a Dukes of Hazzard fan.
Me too.
When I watched Dukes of Hazzard, I was in high school, so I really didn't understand a lot of stuff. I did understand Daisy Duke shorts. I understood a muscle car going fast. And watch this. I understood corrupt police work, which is what that show was about.
Yeah.
It's about the power and corruption again. So it was easy, and I was all into the pro black movement. I didn't learn a lot more about the history of the Confederacy and and I may be one of the few people out there that went and have a copy of the Confederate Constitution. I think everybody
Wow.
should read. I think everybody should read Article 4. It's a great article to make clarity of what it was about. So if you're ever confused about whether not it's about slavery, just read the Constitution. Forget anything else. Read the Constitution. But I like a lot of people though see the Confederacy as rebelling against authority, honoring family history. They see all that stuff. The problem you have is, and in addition to that, it commemorates an effort to destroy America. When you saw some of the things happening with the way America is responding right now to the Confederate flag, what were your thoughts?
It's always going to be one of caution, and the latest outfit has been NASCAR itself. So when you mentioned Dukes of Hazzard, I was all in. I remember that, Bo and Luke and all of them. What's interesting is, you're right, it's about the South. And if you go down I-4, right over in the Sefton area, you see that big Confederate flag hanging right over I-4.
Let me clarify. That is the Confederate battle flag. Okay. That is not the flag of the Confederacy. Okay, right. Go ahead.
Okay. But being from Columbia, South Carolina, they also flew the Confederate flag at the state capitol in the courtyard. Been there since I was born. Never knew. It was only until they made an uproar to remove it that I called my mother, who worked on that compound. I was like, hey, what are they talking about? She's like, the flag that's in the courtyard. First of all, what's a courtyard? I mean, I'm a kid, right?
Yes, right.
But it was always there. And then as a 20-year-old, I still never paid attention to it. So it's something that I've become to accept as that's part of their culture. I do understand, and I see.
Whoa, stop for a minute. You said it's part of their culture.
And when I say that,
you're Southern, you're South Carolina, you wouldn't see it as part of your culture.
No, I mean, I'm actually making the vision. That's part of the Southern white culture. That's their thing.
I didn't want to say I was setting a trap.
Oh, okay.
But I just wanted to get that out of you.
Okay. Yeah. And it may be, I'm only using me as an example, but I don't think that I'm that uncommon. I think a lot of people, especially South Carolina, those places, see it the same way. It doesn't bother them. It's been there so long. So here's where the caution comes in. There's a book called When the Crosses Are Gone, When All the Crosses Are Gone.
Okay.
And it starts to talk about, have you noticed all these churches that are in some of these plazas, the New Day churches, they're flat buildings. You can't even tell that they're churches. They don't have a steeple anymore. And the reason is because some churches gave in to the public pressure. Some people said that the cross was offensive. So we want to show God's love. We don't want to offend anybody. So they don't put a steeple up. So this is a word of caution. Be careful what you wish for, because there are a lot of people who are still not with Christianity, and Christianity is still one of the biggest body. So when people start saying, while you're at it, after you get rid of Lincoln and Robert E. Lee, and while you're at it, take down all those crosses. Then it becomes personal to the African American community as well, because we are still one of the biggest block of church people. So how can you then reconcile? Because if you're giving into all this pressure, you just jump on the bandwagon because everything offends me, take it down. What does that solve?
Well, you're right. I think there are going to be things that offend people. I had a great time on this week listening to NASCAR fans and callers call into one of my sports shows I listen to, talking about what it meant to them and why it didn't mean this to me, but it means these things. This is what it means to me. And it was amazing to me the number of people that had it complete. I know what it meant to them. That was not what the flag generally stood for. And really, it's what those things mean to you. I get that. The big part of it, I guess, is the offended piece and how we treat our other people. The idea that if I do something that offends somebody else, then maybe I want to, you should at least listen to that and see, is there another way that I could do what I'm trying to do? Is this essential? And it came to me very clear. Most of those folks are not very informed about the Confederacy. They really, you think about this idea. Rich white people convince poor white people to go fight for them.
Yeah.
I just think because the rich people didn't go fight,
right,
in mass. They had the poor people in those communities by turning those people against the slaves in theory. But in reality, think about this. Poor white people competed against slaves for labor. And so when you had free labor versus paid labor, what if free labor is always going to win? And that's been the continual process in America of turning one group against another group while a third group benefits while the two groups are over here battling and fighting over this issue. And I get the government piece. There's no reason for anything Confederate to be anywhere on any piece of American government property. In my mind, it's the same as if you were to fly a German flag or a Japanese flag on American government soil. Right. It was an opposing force, no place. In the private sector, you can do whatever you want to do. That's completely, and so that gentleman on the near I-75 that you referenced that flies that flag has every right to fly. Nothing against him flying that flag. It's his property, and if he wants to offend his neighbors in the community, he has a right to do that. I'm just shocked that it seems to be mainstream America, like NASCAR, is banning that doggone Confederate flag. That to me was a surprise.
It's a sign of the times. I will go with that. But at the same time, it's without having leveraged the economic impact, not supporting any other business but Black owned. That's being talked about. But I mean, they're looking ahead.
Hey, Professor, I see a note from back at the studio that we have a caller.
We do.
Yeah, we have a caller. Let's bring this caller in and see what they have to add to the program.
All right, let me unmute him. Good morning, straight up the middle. Caller, who do we have?
Good morning. This is Lisa calling from Northern Virginia. I'm trying to turn you off on my iPad now.
All right.
Near D.C. How are you doing today?
We're doing good. We got to check your credentials first, though, Lisa. Have you been to the district and stood and revered at the Black Lives Matter Plaza?
Yes, I have. And in fact, I sent you pictures because you gave me an assignment last week to go to the new Black Lives Plaza. And I said, I've got to get this done before Saturday. And I wanted to go as well. So my husband and I went down yesterday, and it was surreal. I had a range of emotions. I closed my eyes and I imagined having the reserve forces there and all these cops or whomever they were that had no badges on. Or it was odd. I mean, when I was there yesterday, they were playing music and, ain't no stopping us now. Some people were dancing. And then, of course, there are Black Lives Matter signs everywhere and graffiti, some really nice murals they've drawn there. But it was a range of emotions. And I'm so glad I went. I want to go back. I just feel like I want to be down there now. And I just got, I'll probably go during the day again if I go back. I think night, even though we haven't had a lot of problems lately, I think I probably would just stick to the daytime and let more of the younger people be out there at night.
Got it. Okay.
But I've been on hold for a minute, so I'm not exactly sure what all topics you covered. When I just got back on, you were talking about these statues. And my husband is a retired military officer. And when he was in his earlier career as a lieutenant, second lieutenant, first lieutenant, his supervisor commander told him that Black men or Black people should not be officers in the military. And fortunately, he was able to get from under this commander, and he did continue to rise up and reach higher ranks in the military. But they do, it's hard listening to like Barr and other people who are at the very top talking about there's no institutionalized racism, when in the military, when you applied for your next rank, your promotion, you actually had to attach a picture of yourself. Mm-hmm. And the reasoning behind that was that they wanted to see how you looked in a uniform. I think it was to see what your race is. And I think that practice is no longer there.
No, it's not there.
That's not there anymore. So that is really good news. So, but, there have been some changes as far as that goes. regarding the statues at Fort Bragg, my husband, I think, is conflicted about this a little bit because when he hears the word Bragg, and he was stationed there as captain, commander, he thinks of force, first of flight. And he does not think the statue should remain. I think he's been able to compartmentalize that part of it and see Bragg as something else. But I think they should just get all these Confederate statues down and put them in a museum and call it people who approve of slavery, generals who approve of slavery. And people can go there and visit those statues.
Well, let me ask you this, Lisa, since we're removing statues, but wouldn't we have to go back and remove George Washington? He owned slaves, and other, significant people in American history owned slaves as well.
Well, did George Washington fight against the Union? I mean, did he fight against his own country like some of the other generals did?
I feel so bad about this because I set a trap. Listen, the British were guaranteeing the freedom of any slave that fought on their side during the Revolution. And if you go back and check out the book called The Book of Lists, that's what that book is about. The Continentalists were not in favor of freeing the slaves. And the British held to that. And what they did is they created the Book of Lists, and all the people that fought for the British during the American Revolution were exported out into Canada, I think it was, and allowed to live in freedom. So George Washington was resolute in his, we're going to have slaves. So that was not emotional leadership. And some historian is listening right now, and I'm going to get a nasty email and correct me. But the movie, The Book of Lists, that's what that book is about. It's about African Americans that fought with the British because they were guaranteed their freedom in exchange for fighting with the British. Now, that could have been a ploy, but it is what it is. And going back to the professor said earlier, Lisa, and we'll let you go after this comment, was, well, where does it stop? If we pull down those statutes, well, when the next thing comes up that people are offended by, what do we do about that?
I don't know. I wish I had an answer for that. I really don't know how you go about doing it. Yeah. Who was like worst amongst the group? Maybe.
Listen,
I don't know.
As somebody said to me once, when I was working for the city of Tampa government, somebody told me it's not a pretty business when you're the person in charge. You got to do some ugly stuff. But we thank you so much, Lisa, for listening in, particularly for waiting on hold. Anything else you want to say before we let you go?
Just a couple other comments.
Sure.
I would like to see how he may have addressed this, but how the professor feels about how Trump tried to describe the beautiful chokehold, and also regarding defending the police. I mean, of course, we need police in our country, but there are several countries who have the vast majority of their police do not carry weapons. Is that something maybe foreseeable in our country, or would the NRA just never allow getting rid of weapons, whether they were for hunting or for police? Thank you, guys. I appreciate you all.
All right. Thank you for calling in.
You're
Professor.
welcome. Bye-bye.
Okay, go ahead, Professor. She's
beautiful asking, police, yeah.
What do you call the beautiful chokehold? the great day that George Floyd had.
Listen, I can't even. Yeah, this is a great day for George Floyd, and that's where I've always said it. I'm sure he didn't mean that. His messaging is crap. Okay, he can't frame it in the right way. He's just not. He's not that guy.
What guy is he then? Tell us who. If we're seeing the wrong guy, who is he?
From the beginning, I've described President Trump as a transactional leader, and this was before. I mean, this was.
What does that mean, though? So help us lesser.
Okay.
What does that mean?
Well, a transactional leader is. Well, I want something. You give me something, I give you something. I expect
that's quid pro quo.
Well, transactions. So
that's kind of illegal, isn't it? That I give you something, you give me something in government.
Well, part of his giving is whether or not I'm going to keep you on board. He's prone to fire people. in that transactional leadership that he has in his cabinet, they all know. And that's why I said Tim Scott is probably that he's trying to navigate those lines. He can't fire Tim Scott, but when Tim Scott goes up for election, if Trump has it within his power,
he'll primary you.
Right. So that's the transactional part of him. So this other stuff is just hard for him to try to come out and get in front of and say something really charismatic, and people go, man, he gets it. No, we will never have a society where, at least in American culture, where we will have police officers without guns. You can't compare us to other countries because it is the big and beautiful, the US of A, is where people can come over here and achieve their highest goals and do what they want to do. You can't do that in all these other countries that you're trying to compare to how they run their society. People just emboldened to do and say what they want to say. That's why I can say that's why we have this type of movement. And we have such a mix of protesters and marchers because everybody has their own agenda. They're just waiting their turn. So, yeah, let's get these statues right now. And I truly believe the two things, I'm going to let it go because we have to get off there. Two things. I bet the Democrat Party is going to have as part of their platform, defund the police. So since you said that some people, I bet that's going to be a part of the platform.
They won't use that word. They'll use.
They may not use that. Yeah.
They're going to use something, say, restructuring law enforcement to serve the needs of the community.
But here's the thing, you can't take it back. And that's where the Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer's think that people are going to forget.
Nancy's not in favor of defunding police.
But what I'm saying, I use them as an example because they changed their position like on Trump, and then they had the Kente on, like, he should stop doing these photo ops, and they go and take a knee, and she can't even get up from the kneeling position. It's all photo opportunity. So, and I forget my other point, but we got 2 more minutes.
I think it's called politicking, isn't it? Is that what you do?
And call it politicking.
Now, right now.
Yeah.
So right, we call it politicking, and here's where we get struggle with Trump is we know who she's politicking to. The crazy part is who is he politicking to? And that's what that racist whistle tone is all about. Is people accuse him of politicking to that base. And his language, we talk about Biden gaffing. I mean, this guy can't go to the bathroom without putting out a gaff.
Exactly. But the benefit that he has, he's president. Right. Needs to get in the door without these gaffes.
Well, and I think right now, if as it stands, I think people will accept gaffes. They'll accept it.
Okay.
They'll accept gaffes. What they seem to be not be wanting to accept is his lying for the sake of lying.
Right.
His willingness to chew up other people to get what he almost wants. And I don't know how he recovers from what happened with Mattis and some of these other generals who've come out and said his level of divisiveness. I just don't know because I think elections, and we can finish on this point. I think elections are won in the middle. That's what I think they're won.
Exactly.
And I don't know if the middle right now likes the toxic nature of what he's putting out.
Well, that's the same, that may be the same word for word that a lot of pundits were saying in 2016. He can't get the mid. He only has his base. When are you guys going to start to understand he's hard to quantify and qualify?
Last thing, real quick. Republicans are moving the party to Jacksonville.
Yay!
Good or bad?
Oh, I think it's good. I mean, one, you split the deck. They're still going to handle the administrative part in North Carolina, and then we're going to have
the party.
Yeah.
The party.
Yeah, so I think I don't see a downside to it.
Florida coronavirus infections up 25% in the last week.
Stop it. No one was saying coronavirus inside of all these marches. I just find it very convenient when you want to stop something that Trump's doing. It's going to be this uptick in the coronavirus.
Why? Here's why. Because he's not advocating for any social distancing or face masks. At least in the protests, people tried to say, look, be responsible, stay your distance, social distance, face mask. And I think a lot of people did comply. Some did not. But the whole reason they're moving it is because he doesn't want to comply with the CDC guidelines. I find that ironic, though.
I think that's I don't know if that statement is what he says. He's saying that the governor is dragging his feet on the policies, and he's using the social distance and those type of CDC guidelines as the reason why he's not doing it. I think the governor's trying to navigate the same waters that Tim Scott is, trying to do right by the president, but understand he has a state to run.
I think he set the president up, and I know we're running out of time. I think he wanted the president out. We'll find that out later this week. Closing comment, Professor.
You know, I'm going to get to one of those marches. I'm going to put some skin in the game. I went Thursday, but it rained and the lights outside. So they didn't want a conservative Thursday, but I'm going to try again this week. So
okay, well, good deal then. Well, good. I appreciate it very much. As always, Professor, the highlight of my week is getting on here talking with you, and of course, we really appreciate the listeners and the callers. You're listening to Intex News Radio, reality radio where everybody can be a star. We will be back here next week. See you soon. Be safe, everybody.
All right, we're out.